Who do you trust more? Do you trust talking to a professional or using a standalone AI tool? 63% prefer to talk to a person. This is the most time-saving thing of all, is creating what I call my master prompts document. Let's not use AI to allow ourselves to get lazy. We all have heard of the study that came out where they analyzed, what happens to the brain power of individuals that are using AI and not using AI. And they found that those that use AI, well, it seems that they are not thinking as critically as they once were, right? You're going to get a lot more tailored output by really giving it those details versus just write me an email.
Hey, everybody, Ron Vaimberg here with another edition of the Ron Vaimberg Podcast. And I am incredibly excited to have the honor and privilege to have Megan Anderson from Highway on with us. Megan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
For those of you that don't know, Megan's been in the business, been in and around the industry. She's been with Highway for 10 years and has won a number of awards, but two very prestigious awards are Housing Wire's Women of Vision Award and also the 50 under, I think got it right, 50 under 50 award as well. What I wanted to do to bring to the audience today, Megan, is your presentation was about AI. What are you seeing? What are you seeing in the industry? Just give us your perspective.
Yeah. So for me, AI started because in the speaking world, I was constantly getting asked to speak about the market, the housing market, where we're headed. But I had gotten asked back in 2022 to speak about artificial intelligence. And that was right when ChatGPT kind of just launched to the public. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know nothing. What am I going to talk about? And so that is when I started really diving into artificial intelligence. And honestly, I gotta say, it came at really the perfect timing for me because at this point in time in my career, I was very heavily burnt out. And I think for anyone that is sitting there experiencing burnout, if you have not dove into the world of artificial intelligence, you need to. Because what this allowed me to do was to go through all of my tasks that I'm doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly perspective. And I focused more so on the ones that I really despise doing, like the ones I really had to talk myself to get in to complete those tasks. And for me, one of those tasks was, every month we do a live webinar for Highway and we have a guest come on. And I love researching the guest. I love interviewing the guests. But what I really hated doing was everything afterwards, creating it into micro content, getting the short little blurb for the YouTube, the short little blurb for the Instagram, the one for the website. It was just endless, the recap email. And it would soak up the entire rest of my day. But then artificial intelligence came out. And the next thing you know, it was like we got ChatGPT, and then it was just so many AI technologies just thrown at us all at once. And a lot of people just got overwhelmed and decided not even to dip their toe in the water. But I started very specific with solving this one pain point. And by understanding that this was a pain point, that allowed me to look for different AI solutions. And I found some, Opus Pro being one of them, because I could just upload that entire video of that interview and it would chop it into the micro content, right? And then learning how to prompt within these large language models like ChatGPT saved me a lot of time. And I started with one pain point. And once I did that, I started analyzing all of my pain points. And I started doing what I call, and I think this is the most time-saving thing of all, is creating what I call my master prompts document. So for all of those pain points that I didn't necessarily enjoy that aspect of my job that I had to do, I had crafted a prompt. And if you've been in ChatGPT, it's one thing if you go in there and you're like, write an email for first-time home buyers. It's another thing if you're going in there and you're saying, hey, I'm John Doe, an originator from here. I try and connect with my audience this way. My process is a little bit different. I have a client that's struggling with this. Can we craft an email campaign on the benefits of buying versus renting? Right? You're going to get a lot more tailored output by really giving it those details versus just write me an email. And so I did the same thing with all the tasks that I didn't really necessarily enjoy doing that were really causing me burnout. And so every time that I would go and have to complete that task, now I had a done for you prompt, right? And yes, it still requires editing because no matter how many times I put parameters in the prompt, like leave out the dashes, I don't want a calendar emoji, it still is going to throw them right my way, no matter how much I tell it not to. But it's over time starts to sound a lot more like you, and you don't have to edit it as much. And so that started to give me control of my life back again. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching other people about AI, because I just truly believe that it is such a vehicle for us to get back to experiencing humanity, right? To having dinner with our family and not feeling guilty, to being able to read a book, to whatever it is and however you want to spend your time, living in a van, going out for a hike, whatever it is. Now you have control back, or maybe it's just so you can spend more one-on-one interaction with your clients, building that relationship that artificial intelligence isn't going to be able to do.
The biggest thing though is, what are your pain points, and how can you use AI to solve it? So t- take off your highway hat for just a second and put on an originator hat. Even though you were never an originator, from my experience, I'm I'm teaching AI to my audiences as well, and I'm blown away by either the blank stares or, holy crap, I didn't know you could do that. What are some of the things that you're seeing originators do with this? You already gave an example of how an originator could take a video and record a social media post or an interview or whatever it is, upload it into, I think you said Opus Pro is the program you're using?
I use Opus Pro to take long form content and put it into short form content. Yes.
Okay, so long form
But
content. And there's many programs. There's many
there's
programs that'll
so
do that.
many. Yeah.
Ev- Every
I
two
would
set.
say, as an originator, thinking about your pain points that AI can really help solve, there's so many. I mean, first and foremost, email campaigns, right? You want to stay top of mind. Do you have email campaigns built out for the refinance clients, for the people that attended the open house over the weekend? Whatever the case may be, writing these email campaigns can take a lot of time, and chat can really help you develop these in a really beautiful way and save you a lot of time in that regard. Another thing that AI has been really helpful for is social media side of things. You know, whenever things get busy, and even if they're not busy, it's like that's the biggest excuse I hear is just I don't have time to do social media, and it tends to just kind of fall on the back burner. And I think utilizing AI can really help you up your level and up your level of consistency specifically, and make it sure that you are staying aligned with your branding when it comes to any kind of marketing content and any marketing material. And then, I have started to see quite a few platforms roll out that can help you as far as staying consistent with following up with your leads, whether that's calling them, getting them to book meetings. Like there's AI voice platforms out there now that integrate within CRM platforms that can really help you in staying consistent, top of mind with that client. It really, I mean, that's why I always tell people just analyze your business and find those pain points, because there's probably an AI platform out there that can help you with anything. And if it can't, then you can start to build out automations and integrations, and that's where it gets really fun but also overwhelming.
Uh, the build out part, I started like just twitching, inside when you start talking about the build out
Yeah.
part. But fortunately, when I do anything at this point now, I mean, I think about what I wanted to do, and then I just ask whomever, can it be done, and if it can't, it can figure out a way to do it, and what have you. Because it's always a core thing that I teach. What is the highest and best use of your time?
Mhm.
And as an originator, what is the highest and best use of your time? And so I keep it really simple, which is going to tie in, and I'm going to definitely want your input on this or ideas. Is if it's just an originator, I don't mean just an originator in a derogatory way. I mean just an originator. I mean you're just focused on originating loans. Well, then your highest and best use of your time is relationship
Yeah.
slash lead generation, selling people on doing business with you, and then dealing with high level problems that your processing or whomever can't handle. And the simplest example I always give is if an appraisal comes in low, in my book, your LOA or your processor is not handling that conversation. That is you as the LO. If you want to start building out a team and whatever, then you have more of those top priority responsibilities. But as a sole originator, it's though to me those are the three things. And then I always ask, I go, tell me or write down all the other things that you do in a day that don't fall into that category. And then begin the question I always ask is there an automation for this? Is there an AI that can do this? Or who or what is the ideal system to do this for me? So I'd love to hear, you know, with what I said, do you agree with what I said? And if you do, how would you expand on that as far as advice to the audience?
Yeah, I think that those are definitely kind of the top things that originators have to focus on, and I think that AI can definitely help when it comes to automating various tasks. And it's all about just kind of getting started and picking one point to start from. I think a lot of times people look at it as there can be a solution for everything and they want to get started with everything. But especially when it comes to AI, you need to start small, implement, and then kind of grow it out from that point. And I would start with things that aren't automated. Like automations are nice, but I think that starting off learning how to communicate with these large language models to have it help you with things like the client follow up, help you write that email to the client that thoroughly explains overcoming this challenge, right? Or whatever the case may be. Starting by understanding how to communicate is definitely, I think, the way to go before jumping on the automation train.
Agree with you 1,000%. You had said something in your presentation where a question that you asked the audience was, what is one thing or what is anything that you constantly have to explain over and over to borrowers? So if I had that, I constantly have to explain the home buying process.
Mhm.
Now, there is no shortage of people who will give a borrower a 3-page document that explains, that we can, right while we're on this call, find it online. I can pull up another screen and find it online. But h- how do we how do we use AI to do that?
Well, there's so many different ways. One, you could use it to help create video content so that you can create short form video content that you're pushing out there. So you're answering this question before they can even approach you to ask you. They're already getting an answer. So that's a great way to do it. It could also help you, draft the email as far as explaining it. I mean, there's so many different ways that AI can ultimately help with that. I showed also when I spoke how you can create your AI avatar, and your AI avatar is essentially a twin of you that can help explain the process. And you can go through some critical kind of time periods within the customer journey where those videos can automatically go out to provide value. But the other thing that I want to point on too is even if we're using AI to help answer these repetitive questions and things like that, the thing that I think that we're going to have to really be careful with based off of all the studies that are going out there, and I talked about this on stage. A study was out there from Cotality, formerly known as CoreLogic, where they interviewed people during the home buying process before and after purchasing a home. And there's a few things that kind of came up within this study. One, there was definitely a lack of trust. Individuals that were purchasing a home, they were stressed and confused. It was not a straightforward process. And AI, yes, if I have a video that comes out at a critical time and explains something to the client that we're diving into next, that's going to help build trust along that customer journey and explain to them and make it less stressed and less confusing. But I think the aspect that we're going to have to remember as we continue to use artificial intelligence is bringing in that human quality, bringing in kind of that storytelling, because the other aspect that was part of this survey was that there was really a gap. When individuals were asked, during critical time periods of the mortgage process, your buying your home journey, who do you trust more? Do you trust talking to a professional or using a standalone AI tool? 63% prefer to talk to a person. And I don't think that that is going to change, especially in this world. I was just at a concert over the weekend and I started to think about how much more I'm actually appreciating live music because I know that it's coming from that individual right there in that time at that moment. And people are going to appreciate that more and more, this human connection as we continue to evolve into this world of AI. So I think it's making sure that every single client initially and throughout different parts of the customer journey, you're reaching out one on one. You're having that customer conversation, that one on one human to human conversation interaction. That is going to build the most trust, right? And especially have that initially. But then you can let them know, hey, I do utilize artificial intelligence. You're going to get some videos throughout the process.
I want to make sure everybody heard what Megan just said. Let them know they're going to receive artificial intelligence. There's nothing worse than where somebody tries to pass, well, there are plenty of things worse, but it really kind of is, to me, it's disrespectful to try to pass off AI as if it were you. And there are people that do that.
There are
There are
people think
people
that
that
they don't need to say anything. And listen, we can all tell. Okay. One, the writing. We already talked about how you can tell. The
yep.
other thing that drives me nuts right now is you got these people posting like new selfies every day. And you can tell they're like AI generated selfies, which is fine. But it's like, come on, we have a better use of how we can use artificial intelligence in our day. Okay. We don't need a picture of you every day in a new selfie.
Here's the thing, though, and I agree with you 1,000%. But a client, one of my top clients, she sent me a link to, she said this had been done to her, and it came from a realtor that she does business with, where basically you call a number and the person answers. It's AI, but the person, it's a spoof, and the person's like as she described it, it sounds like an 80-year-old lifelong smoker. Sounds like that harsh. And basically, you'd call up and say, I heard you're interested in getting a mortgage or whatever it is, and it goes very quickly from conversational to like they're literally cursing at you, and it's a spoof. And so her realtor said she was fooled by it. And then she told me about it. And I go, well, send it to me. I want to hear it. I go, because you can always pick up when it's AI. She goes, this is really good, or what have you. And I go, I'll be honest with you. I'll call it and I'll let you know. Okay. The first thing that happened is I knew right away it was just like bullshit, is because the phone never rang. Okay. It never
Mm,
rang on my end. So it was an instant pickup. So I'm like, okay, well, that's the first red flag, but not the actual giveaway. But then I immediately picked up on two things. One, that little split second extra delay in response time that doesn't, it's just not fluid conversation. It doesn't matter if they're 80 years old or 8 years old. There's just that little extra delay that doesn't belong. And if you really pay attention to AI, at the end of almost every sentence, it flattens out. The tone flattens out.
right.
And by the way, all of you that are hearing this, you're not going to be able to unhear it now. Okay. You're going to hear it now every time you hear AI. It flattens out. Like their finishing tone is not the way people normally communicate. So I wrote her back and I go, yeah, it took me 5 seconds to figure it out. She's like, I go, I'll teach you yet, and then I'll show you. But so, you got to be honest and transparent about that. But I just want to touch on another point. You had left it because I was presenting after you had presented in the morning. I presented after lunch. And by the way, I never got a chance to thank you. You made my job really easy because I had a whole bunch of things I was going to talk about in AI. And John came up to me. She goes, I hope Megan didn't steal your thunder. I'm like, hell no. She made my job easier. I could talk about other things now. So I must have referenced you about half a dozen times, if not a dozen times, on things because you nailed so many things I was going to talk about. But I said this when it comes to, Megan, you were talking about Cotality's trust factor. And I say this all the time, the more emotional a decision is, the more human interaction is needed. And that totality, 63%, which I truly believe is maybe that's for housing, but I gave this example. I go to the audience, have you ever had a situation where you were uncertain about something with your health? And everybody raised their hand. And I go, did you Google it? And everybody raised their hand. I go, did you feel better afterwards? And everybody's like, no. I go, and it used to be that the internet gained trust. Now it creates confusion. And we know chat, and maybe you can add to this chat, perplexity, whatever it is. None of these programs think. Can you talk to a little bit about that? They don't think. What is it that they do?
Yeah, they don't think. They basically have an endless knowledge base, right? Or however you control that knowledge base. There's different ways to control it. But if you just say you go to chat and ask a question, it can search the web. So its
Right.
knowledge base is anything that's ever been put out there. And we know that these things don't think. There was a big splash a while ago in the news when someone went on, it was Google's platform, and asked, like, what should I do if I'm sad or depressed? And it said, eat rocks. Now, obviously,
I
you
didn't hear
shouldn't
about
eat
that one.
rocks, right? And then there was another one where it was like, how do I keep cheese on a pizza? And it was like, use edible glue. Now, obviously, these are not right answers. But the reason and how it was picking it up is because, again, we have to go back to its knowledge base and what it was pulling from specifically in this scenario were comments that people were commenting on a Reddit thread. Now, obviously, that's not right, right? Those are not correct answers or what any of us would logically do. And I think that it's very important that you understand, anyone listening to this, you have to understand how these things work. They're not actually thinking either. They recognize patterns, they have a big knowledge base, they reference that, they can do a really like incredible, amazing stuff. But at the end of the day, don't put all of your trust in these models. I mean, so many people are also using these models as kind of like a therapist. And while it is great and it's nice to essentially have kind of a non-bias well, not an individual model platform data to communicate with, it's not always going to give you the right answers. And we have to understand that, and you can't trust everything that's coming out of this. It's just you got to double check everything. It's getting better as day goes on, but let's not use AI to allow ourselves to get lazy. We all have heard of the study that came out where they analyzed, what happens to the brain power of individuals that are using AI and not using AI, and they found that those that use AI, well, it seems that they are not thinking as critically as they once were. But I think that all comes down to choice as well. It's kind of like, unfortunately, like having a calculator. I remember in college, they decided we couldn't use a calculator. And all of a sudden, it was like, holy shit, I'm learning math for the first time. It is the same kind of thing. So don't allow AI to let yourself get lazy, but realize that it is a tool there that is there to help you, but it's not there to make it so you don't have to work.
I started cracking up as you were talking because, first of all, there's also another lawsuit that just came out recently where OpenAI is being sued because a child or young adult was
Suicide.
committed suicide, but was talking to chat as a therapist
Yeah.
for hours a day. And chat, apparently, again, I don't want to get sued for misinformation, but whatever AI it was, supposedly gave it he basically said, you really need to keep this between us or something like that. I'm pretty sure that's, I
It's
don't like
not
to go into
good. Yeah.
it was not good. But in regard to critical thinking, uh, Megan, have you ever seen the movie Idiocracy?
No.
It's about two people that are put away for an experiment, sleep for a year, and be woken up, but they're forgotten about, and they wake up 50, 60 years later, or whatever it was, or 100 years later, and they're found by, they're uncovered by accident. But that part of it's not new. The idea behind the movie, though, is what happened to the world when everybody stopped reading, because these two people now are the smartest people on the planet. And it's a total stupid humor comedy. but I watch it, and my son and I, we just look at it. And we're like, every time we see people do like really stupid things, and I'm guilty of it too. The first words out of his mouth and my mouth are like idiocracy. And
Mhm.
if you look at this, you could actually see this happening
Yeah.
where a child asks AI, "What's 2 plus 2?" You know,
Mhm.
they just write down the answer. They don't know how they got the answer,
Right.
and so it's a very interesting time, and it's only going to get crazier. It's only going to get crazier.
I am so glad that this did not come out when I was a child because I don't think at that point in time as a child, or I think about especially high school or college, I mean, I didn't like doing homework. And I was a pretty smart, I was a smart child. I was a smart kid, but I just didn't like doing homework. I would have used AI on everything and I
Yeah,
wouldn't have learned, I already did a lot of toilet bowl flushing. This would have really just taken it to the next level, I'm sure.
I actually saw. I saw this thing. I was looking up for like the dumbest Amazon posts or whatever of not posts reviews or whatever it was, and there was one. These days, unfortunately, you don't know if it's real or not, but this was one of a toilet bowl brush where the person gave it a 1 star and basically said because it hurts too much.
Oh my God. Mhm.
Let's make this real simple. A lot of people fear it. A lot of people are uncertain about it. They're afraid of making mistakes. How does someone make it really simple if they are really in their base mode? How do they get started? And then when we have people who have started, you have a lot of people who've started, but then they've just plateaued. So let's give
Right.
advice to those two groups.
Yes. So if you're just getting started, pick one platform, whether it's Chat, Gemini, Claude, whatever, just pick one. Learn on one. And then you're going to open up the chat window. And while there's 6 elements actually to a prompt. Focus on the first two. If you're just learning, focus on these first two. The first one is context or mask. So I am a loan officer, I am a real estate agent who is trying to grow my social media, who is trying to get more refinance clients, who is trying to land new referral relationships, right? So we have the mask, who you are, a little bit about what you're trying to do. And then the second element is task definition. That's what you want the large language model to do. Write an email for first time home buyers, create a 3-month social media strategy, right? So as long as you focus on those two, so context or mask, and task definition, you're going to get a pretty high quality output. Now, if you've been prompting for a while and you're still like, well, I don't know, I have to edit a lot of things still. And, it's this whole thing kind of every time I have to do this. Well, now I recommend that you take some time and fill out the rest of the elements of a prompt. So we covered the first two, remember context or mask, and then task definition. The next one is examples. So let's say that I want to have it help me with social media. Well, I might pull examples from some social media posts, whether they're my own or someone else's that I really like, that I want it to kind of emulate or, be similar, right? So I'll pull examples and I can use those in the prompt. Now we're on to the fourth element here, which is expected behavior. This is how you expect it to perform. So I expect you to vary sentence length. I expect you to write it at a fifth grade reading level. I expect you to not include any dashes, right? And then we move on to the fifth element, which is what is considered good. So in this case, a good output would be 150 words or less. A good output, I always put back in here again, no dashes. A good output would, whatever it is, whatever your criteria is. And then the last element is expected steps. And this one I want you to think about. Like if you were to hire someone to complete this task that you're having AI do for you right now, how would you advise them to get it done? So let's say, for example, I'm having it help me build out some social content or a social strategy. Well, what I might first want it to do is I might want it to go to my website first to read about me and kind of pull what it needs to for some branding and language purposes. Right. And then what I might have it do is, you know, then I might have it read its knowledge base where maybe I've uploaded some other examples or whatever the case may be. And then I want it to ask me any clarifying questions. And then lastly, now I want it to develop the 3 month social strategy or whatever the case may be. So, what are the logical steps that you want it to go through? And I always have in there in the logical steps, I always put in there, ask me any clarifying questions that you need to give me a high quality output because
I like that.
oftentimes you're not thinking about it. Like you don't know, right? And so just simply by asking it that, it's going to spark it and you're going to get a higher quality output because it's going to be asking those, again, clarifying questions.
Those steps are fantastic, and even the clarifying question is something that I know I use chat every day, and something that I probably myself need to get a little bit better at because it'll give me a better output, which means I get to do less editing. I got one more
Yes.
question for you.
Right.
What is something you've never taught or told an audience?
A major theme that has been part of my life. So for those of you that don't know, I've been living in a van full time for the past like 312 days.
Love that.
And with that, I've been very much exploring what life would look like without the self-created limits we've put on ourselves. And so I guess for anyone listening here right now, I just want to leave you with kind of the thought and curiosity of what are the limits that you've placed on yourself over time? Maybe through experience, maybe it's protecting you or seems like it's protecting you, but maybe it's not anymore. And maybe it's not supposed to. And maybe you're ready to break free. But in order to do that, we first have to gain a level of awareness and a level of curiosity. So I just want you to ponder, what are those limits that are keeping you safe right now?
First of all, what you just said is just freaking awesome. And see, I asked the question, and I never know what I'm going to get as an answer. But I remember when we met a number of years ago, and you were telling me that this was something you were going to do, that you wanted to go and live in a van or whatever. And I was fascinated by it. I'm thinking like, okay, that's interesting. She's a little off the wall. My first time meeting her, and she's telling she's. But when we saw each other, and you said, I think I even said to you, I go, did you ever um, go to the van? And you go, yeah, I've been living in it for almost a year. And I think what you just shared is freaking awesome, and you've done something that so few people would ever dare to do. And I'm not talking about living in a van. I'm talking about just do something without those boundaries. So that thank you for sharing that. I
Thank
thank you.
you.
I'm sure the audience thanks you. And thank you so much for being part of this podcast. And oh, oh, I know you're still there. So I'm just gonna say I'm looking forward to the next time that you and I are sharing a stage together.
Yes. I'm
Okay.
looking forward to it too. I got multiple cameras up here.
That's
Thank you so
okay.
much for having me. Thank you everyone for tuning in.